you said you were talking with about 30 spiritual masters.
Teachers and students.
Including Andrew.
Yes.
And they were all of them are Western teachers or not?
I spoke quite a lot with Muji. Do you know Muji? So he's, you can say he's Western, but he's definitely from a Eastern tradition. Some Zen teachers. They were all, I think all of them were Western, yes. I spoke with some Jewish rabbis, but they were all Western, yes.
And with 70 students who were studied with these 30.
Yes, and also when I interviewed some of the teachers, I asked them about their relationship with their teachers. Many of them tried to correct the mistakes that their teachers made, and realized it wasn't working. So, for example, students of people like Adida, or of very guru-like teachers with a very strong hierarchical structure, tried to create a structure that was more democratic, egalitarian, no hierarchy. And after a while they realized it wasn't really working. And they started bringing back elements of surrender to the teacher and of obedience to the teacher. So also from that, it's interesting to see that teachers sometimes try to correct what they felt was wrong with their teachers, and it's like you move back and forth between opposites or different values. But I want to tell you the most interesting, I think, for me, realization I had was after the book was already published. Because the question of what is the fundamental question of what is it in the teacher-student relationship that makes it very special and very potent, very charged. So I kept kind of dancing around that question in the book. And I finished writing it and I felt I hadn't answered it yet. And it was only like a year after the book came out that I became somewhat clearer about the fact that it's a relationship where the dynamic itself between the teacher and the student has its own value. So something gets born that doesn't belong to the student and doesn't belong to the teacher, but belongs to the relationship between them. That is very precious and unique and valuable. And that it requires the student to surrender to the relationship, and it requires the teacher to surrender to the relationship in order for that to really form, you can say, this kind of entity of the relationship to become what it can become. And really, in a way, you could say that the teacher and the student are serving that dynamic. They each have a role that they are required to fulfill in order for the relationship to be what it can be. So it's not really so much about the teacher and it's not so much about the student. They are both needed and they need each other for something to be born from the relationship.
All of your subject was more or less on this position. I mean, all the masters and all the students, or somebody has something opposite.
Well, not a lot of them, but a few of them were critical of their teachers. Yeah. So, for example, but it's interesting because, for example, I interviewed Terry Patton, and he was a student of Adida, and he said something fascinating. He said, "I have two reservoirs of experiences and knowledge in me. One reservoir of experiences and knowledge I can only access when I am bowing down to the grace of my teacher and surrender to his guidance. And the other reservoir of experience and understanding I have only when I say, go to hell and I don't need you, and I stand independently of him completely. And I can't have access to both at the same time. I can either be in surrender to him or in rebellion against him. And the fact that I have these two possibilities living within me, that they are irreconcilable, they are not compatible with each other, is something that I would have to carry with me for the rest of my life. And to me that's, he said, is maybe the greatest lesson I learned from my relationship with Adida.
But isn't it dualistic? And if he really would go for non-duality, he will connect them.
Maybe. Maybe. I'm sure he did a lot of work on that. And I heard other, like a good friend of mine from Israel who was a student of Andrew. We actually met Andrew at the same time and joined the community at the same time. He left a few years before I did, and I remember meeting him after he left, a few years. And he said, I love Andrew like I never loved anybody in my life, and I feel I owe him my life. And I am so angry with him, I hate his guts. And I'm living constantly with those two very, very powerful, contradictory movements. So and he said, you know, I'm doing psychotherapy, I'm going to other teachers, trying to get help, but that was what he described.
But it's good point to beginning of the path for integration, looks like that.
Beginning of
the path for integration, when the human has to clear opposition.
Yes.
Not everyone has it.
I agree.
One of the questions we wanted to ask you, it's your vision of vertical development of human being, ideally on as you see it on yourself. So can you tell about that?